So when I did my December TBR, quite a few of you said, Scott, you're not being very realistic. And you were right. Welcome back to Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. I'm Scott. Nella's not joining me for this video because it's a TBR and she mood reads. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm participating in two different readathons for this month. I'll go through them later, but they are the Invisible Cities Readathon and the Past and Futures Readathon. And I also wanted to discuss a new TBR project that I'm going to do in 2021. Essentially, because I was a bit unrealistic last month, I put 21 books on my TBR and I still have 10 and a half of them unread. So I thought if I don't finish it, I'm going to put it back on my TBR. I thought that'd be really good for readathons, because with a readathon, you put 10 books on your TBR and you only get to 8, and there's like 2 books that go missing, but you wanted to read those books and then they don't fit the prompts for the next readathon. And I'm like, no, if we just have this continually rolling over, then I might be a little bit late, but I'm always participating in the readathons. So that's the plan, to roll the TBRs over, and hopefully by the time we get to December, I'm not going to have 80 books on my TBR and no possible way of completing that. So we'll see whether this plan works to improve my reading, or whether it works to improve my reading enjoyment, or whether it backfires and makes it very stressful. Okay, so what books am I going to read this month? So I'm going to discuss the books that I didn't read in December and the 2 TBRs. But before I do that, I wanted to discuss this book, Ice Candy Man by Bapsi Sidhwa. This is a buddy read with Sarah Wallace. Sarah is a commenter, a subscriber, general awesome person to have around on BookTube. We've already had a couple of short conversations with her on Voxer, and she is just great. So I'm looking forward to reading this with her. If you're in the US, this book I think is called Breaking India in the US. It's got a different US title, and I don't know whether... I don't know who gets which title. So if you're in Australia, it's called Ice Candy Man. If you're in the US, it's called Breaking India. If you're in another country, it could be called either of these two. So good luck with that. This is a book about the partition of India at that time, when India and Pakistan were one country, and with Gandhi and all of that sort of stuff. It's told through the eyes of a 6-year-old girl. This comes very highly recommended from Nashwa at Nashwa S. We did a little discussion video with her a few months ago, so I'll link that, and I'll link her channel in the description below. Definitely check her out. Pakistani booktuber, very sarcastic, and this is Bapsi Sidhwa is the Pakistani author she recommends. So I'm very eager to try that out, very eager to talk to Sarah about that. So we'll be reading that in January. Let me just put that down. Now, let's talk about the first of the 2 readathons. Let's talk about the Invisible Cities Readathon. So I've actually written a list of everybody who is hosting the Invisible Cities Readathon. So if you haven't checked out these people's channels or vlogs or whatever they do, go around and check them out. So Michael, who runs Knowledge Lost, Stephanie, who runs Time to Read, Yamini, who runs Shakespeare and Spice, Natalie, who runs Curious Reader, and Nicole is Here to Learn. They are 5 booktubers. In addition to that, there are 2 bloggers, Will, who is My Bookish Empire, and Agnes, who is Beyond the Epilogue. So the aim with the Invisible Cities Readathon is to read works in translation. Every month there are 3 countries. So how the creators of this are doing it is they're all picking the country and going in depth and learning about that. But I want to try and read from all the countries, which means that I'm not going quite as in depth as everybody else, but I've really got a bit of FOMO all of this, like, which one do I pick? I don't know. Also, I don't think it matters if I think the aim is to broaden your horizons, and I don't think it matters how you do all that. Anyway, so there are 3 countries: Morocco, Argentina, and Japan, and I've picked 5 books. One thing I'm going to have to get better at with this readathon is buying these books beforehand, because getting this list together yesterday, I realized that I didn't have any Moroccan or Argentinian books, and that I had to resort to Scribd for what they had, and that's not great. Anyway, so the books that I'm going to read, so Laila Lalami, which is a name that I've really struggled to pronounce, has written a book called The Moor's Account. This is a book about a Spanish ship that sets sail to the Americas. Basically, everybody bar 4 people on this ship die. One of these people is a Moroccan slave who is the Moor of this. Then they go to the Americas, and I assume that they mistreat the Indians, because that seemed to be the fashionable thing to do at the time. And I think it's really cool that we're going to have a slave's view of their masters mistreating other people. I think that is a fascinating point of view for this tale. I've heard good things about Laila Lalami, despite not being able to pronounce her name very easily. I definitely heard good things about her, so eager to try her out. For Argentina, I'm going to read The Passion According to Carmela by Marcos Aguinus. That reminds me of like Marcus Aurelius, the like Roman Empire. It's got that real like regal sound to it. Anyway, this is a book about Cuba and the Cuban Revolution that brought Fidel Castro to power. I am just captivated by that as a premise. I don't know anything much other than that, but do you need to know much more than that? It's Cuba. I guess that's learning about the wrong country, but I don't care. It's broadening my horizons, and I want to know about Cuba. Also, I'm going to discover another Argentinian author, and I've really had quite a good. I've discovered some good Argentinian authors, and I suspect that is a country that I'm going to enjoy exploring more as I read more books. The Wind That Laid Waste by Selva Almeida is a book about so 2 people get caught in a storm, and they go and they seek refuge in this, like, I think it's a mechanics workshop, and there are 2 people in there already, and they sort of get to know each other through this storm. It sounds really quite like experimental and speculative, because that doesn't really sound like a lot of a plot to me, but it's one of those things where it could be quite good or it could be quite bad, so it's a really good book to take a chance on, I think. I'm taking a chance on it, so I could end up loving it, I could end up hating it, is the way that sounds to me. But it's short, and I'm quite happy to take a chance on a shorter novel. I'm trying happy to take a chance on a longer novel, to be honest, but especially happy to take a chance on a shorter novel when it sounds like it could be excellent or terrible. And I think if you don't take those chances, you don't actually find the gems. Now, moving on to the Japanese books, I've actually got a bunch of Japanese books I want to read this year, so if I have time, I will read more, but I have quite an ambitious TBR this month, as is. So the 2 that I've picked that I definitely want to get to are The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This has been all over BookTube. This is a dystopian novel about people having their thoughts controlled, really, or policed, rather. And that seems quite interesting, and I really like a interesting dystopian. Always worried when you hear a dystopian that the premise is more interesting than the story, but that's the risk you take. You often take that risk with other books as well. The other book that has been also, again, all over BookTube is Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. Again, I've sort of saw this book, marked down that I wanted to read it, got it, and then have forgotten pretty much everything about it. The title kind of reminds me, gives me Kim Jong-born 1982 vibes. I don't know whether it's going to be about that, whether it's going to be like a feminist sort of novel about Japan or not. I hope it is, because I think it would be interesting to hear about the woman's perspective in Japan and what life is like there if you're a woman. But it's I don't know what it's about, so we'll see. It's a bit of a mystery. So that's all I'm reading for that particular readathon. And then the other readathon I'm participating in is the Past and Futures Readathon. So that's run by Emily at Novel Novels and Gemma at Read a Book Gem. Check out their channels as well if you're not already subscribed to them. So this has essentially 12 prompts. This readathon just looked like fun. So and I think that sort of fits in with the personalities of Emily and Gemma. So, you know, yeah. So I thought it'd be cool to add that and do that. So prompt number 1 is a genre you want to try, and I've just put this book way out of my reach. So I've probably tried most of the genres, so I'm going to expand genre a bit. This is literary fantasy, Marlon James, Black Leopard, Red Wolf. This has been on my TBR for a bit, and I'm very eager to get to it. Hopefully I will manage to get to it, because I really liked the last Marlon James book. It's probably one of the absolute best books I've ever read, Brief History of the Seven Killings. I'm hoping that this book is just as good. Fantasy and literary fiction combined, literary fantasy. I feel like fantasy has got this like reputation, probably because of the sort of books that the publishers in fantasy publish, but it's got this reputation for being quite escapist, adventurous, not very intelligent reading, and I feel like it's got so much potential to be awesome. So either it's got that potential, or I've just been reading the wrong fantasy books. But so I'll be really interested to read something fantasy that's got a bit of literary merit to it. This is sort of Black African mythology done to like a Game of Thrones sort of scene. This just sounds joyful. I've heard conflicting reports about that, which is often the way you hear about the best books. An era or event that you want to read from, so that you've never read from. The Shadow King by Mazda Mengiste. This is, this has been all over BookTube because it was nominated for the Booker. This is set in World War II, but it's set in the Ethiopian-Italian conflict of World War II. And I've not read about that particular conflict there. Again, this is another one that's got quite mixed reports, but again, you know what they say, mixed reports definitely, mixed reports doesn't always mean that you're going to hate the book. You often I think mixed reports are actually the best thing for a book. A new to you author. So I'm going to pick Roots by Alex Haley. Again, this is the one that I meant to get to in December, but I didn't. So this is a book about the Black experience in the 1930s, I believe. And the history of like slavery and racism in the States. I think that's what it's about. I'll be able to tell you better at the end of the month, hopefully. Number 4 is a new release. I'm going to pick Breasts and Eggs, the translated work. I know it was released in 2010, but I think it was translated last year, and the English translation came out in 2020. Now that I've said that, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I should have looked that up to be sure before I filmed, but I didn't. Number 5 is translated works, and as I'm doing a whole readathon about translated books, I think that we don't need to discuss that too much more. New themes. So I have picked The Hand of Ethelberta by Thomas Hardy. The reason I'm putting this down in the new themes section is that this is Thomas Hardy doing a Thomas Hardy and being funny at the same time, and I'm not sure whether that counts as new themes. Again, it's often hard to answer some of these prompts with books that you haven't read, but Hardy being funny is definitely not something I associate with Thomas Hardy, and it's something that I am curious to try. And again, this is another December book that I didn't get to, but it fits this prompt for me. A new format. So I was like, oh, I've read every format, and then it was like you could pick a new writing style like stream of consciousness or something like that, and I'm like, oh, I think I've read enough stream of consciousness to know that that's not for me. But then I had this book just arrive today, Saga, and this is a graphic novel, and I haven't read a graphic novel before, and I'm like, bah, geez, that was like glaringly obvious. So this is a new format. Now, if you've watched the 112 tags that Nell and I have done, the page 112 tags, we did one with Kieran of KD Books. Check him out if you don't already. I mean, he's massive, so I'm sure you do, but if you don't, he's hilarious. Now, and this was a book that Kieran put in there. Now, firstly, I want to say to Kieran, I'm impressed that you counted 112 pages, because I can't even speak 112 without stuffing it up, but there's no page numbers on here. So Kieran has counted to 112 to find the page. And then when he got to the page, it was quite an unflattering page, and Nell and I read it, and I mean, shadily read it. And Kieran, you were gonna destroy it, and then after we filmed, we had a little chat with him, and he said that it wasn't as misogynistic as it sounds, because this is a book about people exploring their inner prejudices because they have just given birth to a child and checking out their values and how they want to raise their children and all of that. And that sounds like an excellent concept for a novel, and then we've got like this war going on between two different races and interstellar space travel, and I don't know. I kind of tuned out of that bit. I've forgotten that bit, but I listened to the bit that I wanted to read about. So that sounds like it's going to be excellent. So we'll see. Also, with the number of books I've got on there, it's nice to have a nice, short, easy read. New format. A book that a relative recommended. So my wife has recommended, she's recommended Margaret Atwood in general to almost anybody she can speak to, but in particular, she has recommended Alias Grace to me multiple times. It's a book that I'm quite eager to read. We've got quite a compelling character, unreliable narrator. A woman is accused of a crime and you're never quite sure whether she did it or whether she is the victim of the patriarchy, and I quite like that sort of a premise. There's a Netflix series of it which I've seen, so hopefully that's quite accurate to the series, because I really liked, hopefully the series is accurate to the book rather, because I quite liked the series, and I suspect I will enjoy the book. A book recommended by a friend, The Plague by Albert Camus. So Nell's bestie Kate, who I'm also friends with, I mean, it'd be weird if I wasn't. It would be like Nell's bestie Kate, who I don't like, but I do. I quite like Kate. She's an excellent person. Read The Plague by Albert Camus earlier in the year, and she said she found it funny, which means that I will either also find it funny or this will be horrible and dark. Either way, it's going to be an excellent book. I have had some experience with Camus before, and I've not enjoyed him, but I think it's about finding the right translation with Camus. I suspect that the translator that I read, and I suspect that's a lot with translated fiction. I guess this could have been a prompt for translated as well. Yeah. So hopefully I find a better translator this time. Maybe I should read the translator's note before I read the novel instead of after. But the trouble is, they often put spoilers in there, and I don't like to have that. A reread. If you follow Jen the Librarian, you will already know that she is reading all of Thomas Hardy in order that they are published in. And she sort of vaguely invited people to read along with her in a like non-formal sort of thing. Anyway, she's going to do some reviews of all the books she's read, and it's always better to have just read a book when you do a review, I think. This is one of my favourite Hardy novels, and this just happens to be the next one on the list after Ethelberta, which I didn't get to in January, in December. This has two of the best, probably my two favourite Hardy characters that I have come across. Eustacia Vi, she's fiery, she don't take no shit, and she often ends up in trouble because of it. And Diggory Venn, he's just excellent. He's like a hero that shouldn't be a hero. A book from the year of your birth. I'm going to read Kazuo Ishiguro's The Pale View of Hills. That's Ishiguro's first novel. I've picked that. There wasn't a lot that I hadn't read from the year of my... There wasn't a lot from the year of my birth that I either hadn't read or that I was interested in reading. But I am interested in reading more Ishiguro, and that's his first novel. So I don't know whether that makes me incredibly old that I have been alive for the entire writing career of Ishiguro, or incredibly young that I'm only as old as somebody's writing career. I don't know, but I quite like Ishiguro. Now, the 12th prompt on this is read a new middle grade book, and I've just put down the letters N and O because I don't like middle grade. It's not my thing. No disrespect to anybody who does like middle grade. Totally get liking escapism. There's probably a time to read middle grade. There's probably could get into it for reading when I'm a little bit tireder or just need something light after a particularly heavy book, but it's not something that I'm terribly interested in reading either. So that leaves me with 3 books that I didn't read from my December TBR that I haven't discussed yet that I will add to my TBR. So the first one, Wyrd Sisters. I hope to finish Wyrd Sisters today, but it's starting to get late in today, and I don't know whether I'll manage to finish that or not. And I don't like taking books over from December into January. I have no problem doing it with any other months, but at the end of the year, it's not neat. So, but my care factor for that is relatively low because I know I'm being silly. So we'll see whether I finish that or not. Pachinko by Jin Lee is a novel that I wanted to read last month, but I didn't. And so I'll give that a shot. And lastly, I've got down the final 3 Wheel of Time books. I had the final 4 Wheel of Time books on my TBR. I did want to finish those books in 2020. They are definitely starting to drag. So if you have read the Wheel of Time books, do the last 3, do they is the slog over yet? I feel like I'm really slogging through these last few books. So, and they're not short books. So maybe I should give up with rereading that book, a series that I liked when I was much younger. Maybe I don't know. I have enjoyed some of those books too. I do want to know how it ends, so I will read them. Anyway, that is the end of my January TBR. Thank you very much for watching. If you got to the end, give me a like, please, and a subscribe. If you have read any of these books, let me know what you thought. Particularly, let me know if you loved a book here, because 21 books was too much for December, and I've rolled over a whole bunch of books. So I've decided to make it easier on myself, and I've only got 20 books on my TBR this month. So I do need help prioritizing. I have picked some shorter books though, so let's hope that I can roll considerably less over to the next month. Are you participating in either the Past and Futures Readathon or the Invisible Cities Readathon? Let me know, because I'd love to see what books you are reading for those prompts and those readathons, because especially I'm very interested in what translated works people are reading, because that is usually books that I've never heard of before, and that's always quite exciting. Anyway, if you got to the end, give me a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and let me know what you thought of any of the books. Bye.